Hi, I'm Deanne Birch, the Programme Lead for Hep C Later. Thank you for joining us for another exciting instalment in our podcast series. Today, we're hearing from Mark Gillyon-Powell, Head of NHS England's Hepatitis C Elimination Programme, who will be talking to us about all things Hepatitis C elimination. Hi, Mark. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Could you please tell us a little bit about your role in leading the National Hep C Elimination Programme and the various teams you work with across England?
Hi, thanks for inviting me to take part in the podcast. I'm Mark Gillyon-Powell. I'm the head of programme Hepatitis C Elimination at NHS England. Really what my role involves is anything that you can think of to do with hepatitis C elimination. I kind of try to keep all of the bits in order, really. So I'm responsible for NHS England for commissioning the clinical services that are provided by NHS trusts and developing the service specification that they deliver to. But I'm also responsible for things like the elimination initiatives that run across the country. So some of those are paid for by NHS England, and I manage that budget and make sure that those elimination initiatives are doing what they're supposed to do and delivering all of the things that we need them to. But then I also manage the relationship with our partners in the pharmaceutical industry who pay for some of the elimination initiatives as well. More widely within NHS England, I work very closely with our data and analytics team across in another part of NHS England, but also other partners like NHS England Finance, our commercial medicines team who are involved in the strategic procurement that helps us to pay for a lot of the work that's done.
So for those people who might be unaware, how prevalent is Hep C across England and who's at risk? And generally, what are the effects of hepatitis C on a person's overall health?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Prevalence is something that we estimate. So back in 2015, when the first estimates were done, 2015-16, we thought that there were probably about 160,000 people in England living with Hep C. Over time, that prevalence estimate has changed, partly because we've treated so many people, so they're no longer living with Hep C, but partly also because we've got better data or better understanding about the population. So now I would say we're probably closer to around 60,000 individuals in England living with Hep C that we still need to find and have some kind of intervention with. Who's at risk? Really a wide range of people can be at risk. The majority of Hep C transmission has been historically and now through injecting drug use. So they've been people who inject drugs have been a really key focus for us in terms of elimination activities so far. But there are also other people who are at risk. So people who maybe used to use drugs and have been in long-term recovery could have acquired the virus in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. Lawyers, teachers, parents, doctors, but won't necessarily think that they've had a risk. But historically, a lot of people have had risks. People who were affected by infected blood or blood products in the 80s and 90s can be at risk. And then other people that we don't necessarily think of. So people who've maybe had a risk while they've been abroad. So they might have had medical treatment abroad because of an accident. They might have chosen to have medical treatment abroad for, cosmetic or other reasons, tattoos and piercings abroad. And if we think about those countries where there's much higher prevalence of hepatitis C, we need to consider that some of those individuals might have had a risk. And then obviously we also have people who are migrants who've moved here from those countries where Hep C is more endemic, if you like, who might have had things like healthcare acquired infections. So a number of countries in South Asia or Eastern Europe, people might have been at risk and not realized it. In terms of effects on health, the difficult thing is that some of the symptoms that people might experience are fairly general. So feeling tired, achy, lacking in energy. And I don't know about you, but I feel like that quite a lot of the time. And I've been tested. I know I haven't got Hep C. So it's difficult to know when you've got the virus until it actually starts to do some serious damage to your liver. And that's when you'll start having more symptoms. And by then, it's probably a bit too late. So what I would say to anybody who thinks they might have been at risk is don't wait until you get some symptoms. Don't wait until you see the effects on your health, because actually at that point, we could have treated you a lot earlier and avoided some of the damage that's been done.
So, Mark, could you tell us a little bit about the successes of the National Elimination Programme to date and how they've been achieved?
Yes, so there have been a number of key successes with the National Elimination Programme. I think that some of the key ones that come to mind. We've treated around 90,000 individuals so far, which is a pretty good going since 2015. As an example of some of the people that we've treated in the last year, we've treated over 100 children, and 90% of those children came from the most deprived 40% of our population. So we know that we're actually reaching people that perhaps other parts of the health system aren't reaching as well. There's been a couple of kind of key achievements that I think is worth flagging. So we've seen a bigger than 37% reduction in hepatitis C related mortality, which is huge for as an achievement. WHO have set as an absolute target in relation to mortality of less than 2 deaths per 100,000 people per year, that we have to achieve by 2030. We've actually already achieved that. We've exceeded that. So at the moment in England, there are around 0.5 deaths per 100,000 population per year. So we've already overachieved the 2030 target. That doesn't mean we stop, because any Hep C related death is an avoidable death. So we will keep working to keep reducing that mortality. The other key achievement that I would draw attention to is that we've seen a massive reduction in the numbers of Hep C related liver transplants. So greater than 52% reduction. That's huge, not only for the individual who doesn't have to go through that life-changing surgery and the implications of that, but it's also a really big achievement for the community in that there are more livers available for transplant, and it's a big achievement for the NHS because it saves us some money. Achievements that's been made, and the way we've made all of the other achievements is because of the partnership working that we've done. So I sit in the middle at NHS England, kind of trying to make sure all of the bits are in place, but I'm not actually delivering all of this work. This work is being delivered by a whole range of people, a massive partnership. And that's what's made all of the achievements possible. So examples include our partnership with the pharmaceutical industry. We have 3 pharmaceutical industry partners that we work really closely with on driving elimination. And they've got specific programs that they lead on for us and that they invest in significantly. Other partners like the Hep C Trust, our national patient group, they're involved in almost everything that we do. Almost every part of the elimination programme has some element in it where the Hep C Trust are bringing lived experience to help us to do it better and to help people to be able to engage and be supported in testing, diagnosis, treatment, and so on. Other kind of key partners with the treatment services, primary care, our partnerships with prisons, and our relationship with His Majesty's Prison and Probation Service has been absolutely central to us being able to deliver the mass testing programs that we have for people in custody. And then we've got other newer sort of developments like the emergency department opt-out testing, which we're just about to expand. But where we're going in and opportunistically testing whole sections of the population on a universal opt-out basis. And what that's going to help us to do is find those people who we we hadn't found in targeted settings like drug services or prisons, and who maybe aren't accessing very specialist services where they can get testing or be offered testing on a regular basis. So we're finding people through the emergency department opt-out testing who we would just never have found. And, you know, we're finding them in their hundreds, thousands, and testing them for Hep C, Hep B, and HIV. Finding new people that need treatment, but also finding people that we've tested before and diagnosed, but who've been lost to care. So there are a whole range of successes and partnerships, but crucially, still much more for us to do.
That's amazing progress. Mark, would you be able to tell us a little bit about the national testing portal? Because obviously that's had huge potential to find and ultimately treat those people who might not typically access healthcare services or might prefer a test discreetly. Could you tell us a little bit about the success of the portal since its launch in May?
Yeah, certainly. The web testing portal was a long time coming. We thought about it a couple of years ago and been through a really long process of developing the idea, going through the significant business planning and commissioning process to get to the point where we launched the web testing portal this year. Our initial thoughts were that there were sections of the community who might be concerned about getting a test. So not traditionally engaged with drug treatment services or other services where they might be kind of offered a test on a regular basis, but also might feel concerned about talking to their GP about Hep C. And we'd had some feedback from a number of people. So older South Asian community members particularly had said that they would never consider bringing this up with their GP. They wouldn't, it's not something that they would want to talk about. And we realized that there was this gap where people weren't freely able to get a free and confidential Hep C test. So we developed the work. We did around a 6-month kind of discovery program, if you like, where we engaged with existing service users, former service users, potential service users, so large numbers of kind of focus groups to say to them, what would a good testing service look like for you? What would it include? What would it not include? Which questions would you be prepared to answer? Because we didn't want to put people off by asking them too much. So basically, we launched in May, really simple concept, an NHS branded website that people can go to. They need to give their name, they need to give their address and a mobile phone number, just so that we can kind of keep in contact with them about testing, and non-negative results. So anybody who has actually got the virus is contacted directly by the clinical service that will effectively manage their care and see them through treatment. What we've seen through that is a real increase in the numbers of tests being ordered, partly by South Asian community members. So after UK-born people requesting tests, the largest group for a number of months was people from Pakistan. So we were reaching a number of people that we knew we needed to. And then what we've seen recently is an increase in the numbers of kits being ordered for testing by people from Eastern European communities. So Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, we're seeing much more orders from those communities now. And we're also starting to see an increase in the numbers of those that are coming back that are positive. So even though we'd thought that South Asian communities would be a large community that we would find through that route, it actually hasn't turned out to be that way. We're probably about a third of the people that we found so far through the web portal testing are from Eastern European communities. So it's taught us really that we need to do some more focused work with those communities. In terms of numbers, it's still relatively small. We've got a kind of steady rate of testing, of background kind of rate of testing, that is going up as more and more of the operational delivery networks communicate more widely about the availability of the portal. And we see significant spikes in the numbers of people ordering tests when we do pieces of national communications work and press releases and so on, targeted at specific communities or specific risks. We've had, I think it's between 45 and 50 people so far who've been found who are Hep C positive, and all of them have been contacted by the specialist treatment providers and linked into treatment. A number of them have now completed their treatment. An example I give is one lady that saw our initial communications when we launched the web portal, hadn't used drugs since the 1960s. She'd actually injected once or twice in the 60s, had seen the web portal launch materials and thought, maybe I was at risk, and ordered to test. That lady, who is in her late 70s, found she was positive, and within days was engaged in treatment and has now cleared the virus. So it's people like that who we want to kind of give them a quick and easy way to get a result, even if they think they might have been at risk. Anybody can have a test. There's no restriction other than the fact that you need to live in England and at the moment be over 18 to get the kits. But anybody who thinks that, even if they just want to set their mind at ease, go on, get a test.
So Mark, a large focus at the moment is currently on those people who might well be sitting in primary care. So how do GPs or those working within primary care get involved with the programme? And what are those sort of, I suppose, 3 key things you would ask anyone in primary care to do to help us work towards Hep C elimination?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Primary care obviously have a national reach of in excess of, I think it's in excess of 62.5 million people who have a GP. So really, as a universal service, it doesn't get much more universal than primary care provision. We know of the 60 or so thousand people that we think are left to be found, probably about 40,000 of those have historic risk factors. So they're not people who are currently at risk and are currently injecting drugs, for example, or involved in other risk activities, but historically they have been. So up to 40,000 people. Some of those we'll find through places like emergency department testing or antenatal testing. But a significant proportion of them we'd be able to find through primary care. We've got some specific tools that we can use, like the patient search identification tool that we developed with our pharmaceutical industry partners at MSD, that we can run on GP caseloads to help us to identify coded kind of risk factors within the primary care record. Obviously, we only do that with proper information governance permissions and so on. So we can do that, and we can work with GPs and GP practices to do that. But what I'd say to anyone who's working in primary care who wants to be involved or wants to help us with the elimination program, I suppose firstly would be to know more about Hep C. I think that's the starting point for any of this, is to increase your knowledge about Hep C and how it could affect your patients and your patient group and what some of the risk factors are. And you can do that through, there are materials and resources that have been developed by Hep C Later that people can access, will help them to better understand Hep C. There are also online courses on the Royal College of General Practitioners website in relation to hepatitis B and C. So increasing knowledge, I think, is the first thing that I would say to anybody who is interested in supporting the programme. I think the second thing that I would ask anyone to do would be to direct people to the web testing portal, hepctest.nhs.uk. And one of the reasons for that is because, yes, some people might be willing to come and talk to their GP about it. Some people might not. So if every GP in the country was able to kind of promote the testing portal, we should be able to kind of gather up a lot more people who might have been at risk at some point. And that can also be done through GP practices want to work with us on it, through things like us providing a link that GP practices can text out to their patient cohort, to their patient group. So sending people to the web testing portal is another really key thing that primary care can do. And I suppose the third thing is, if you really want to be more involved and to do more hands-on kind of thing with in relation to finding Hep C in primary care and helping us to eliminate, anyone can contact us at any time to look at the opportunities that we have available. So we've got a number of GP champions that we've recruited for a number of sessions in different parts of the country, who are going out and helping other GPs to understand how to look for risk within the patient caseload, or how to contact patients who might have been at risk, all of those kinds of things. So there are special kind of GP champions that, and we'll always consider people wanting to volunteer to do that, but also people who there are GPs who are managing treatment for these patient groups, both within their own GP practices, but also more widely across a primary care network, for example, or within a kind of federation of GPs and GP practices. So there are different opportunities that we can talk about with anybody if they want to get in contact with us.
So where do you hope to be by the end of 2025, for example? And what do you feel we need to do to reach the national hepatitis C elimination goal?
Gosh, yeah, 2025, that was NHS England's ambitious target for us eliminating hepatitis C in England. Obviously, we made that pre-COVID, but we're still certainly very focused on eliminating hepatitis C ahead of the 2030 WHO target, significantly ahead of that timescale, I would expect. So what I'm working on at the moment is a plan for 2024-25 and 25-26 that we'll publish in March next year, March 2024, that will kind of set out, I think, and partners think we need to do between now and the end of March 2026, 30th of March, 31st of March 2026. What I want to put in that plan is a number of milestones where we'll be able to evidence the achievement of the World Health Organization elimination metrics over that 2-year period. So 2024, 25, 25, 26. And I think that's feasible for us to do that. What I would say is achieving the WHO metrics for evidencing Hep C elimination is one part of it. I think there are probably other metrics that as a system in England, we might want to add into that. So we might want to add in some specific metrics in relation to how we've dealt with health inequality and inclusion health groups, for example, and how we have fully engaged with different sectors to make sure that we have effectively eliminated across the entire country, which the WHO metrics won't do all of that. So I think there are additional metrics that we can add in. But again, for those 2 financial years, 24-25 and 25-26. And the other thing that I think needs to be developed and presented as part of that time scale is, what do we do after 2026, 26, 27, 27, 28? There are still likely to be some small pockets of Hep C within England. So we're going to need to continue to find and treat people. We're also going to need to ensure that we leave a legacy where there's a system of testing, diagnosis, and simple treatment pathways, so that any cases that do crop up, whether they're individually or small clusters, that we have a way of identifying those quickly and getting those individuals treated, because what we don't want is to lose all of the good progress that's been made. We need to be able to maintain elimination, and WHO will check every 2 years that we are maintaining elimination. So I think that's kind of over the next 2 years, the kind of important tasks of laying out the milestones of how we're going to get to WHO metrics of elimination, our own metrics of elimination, and what we do after that to make sure that it's maintained.
So, Mark, do you have any final messages for anyone who's interested in being part of hepatitis C elimination in England?
Yeah, anybody who wants to be involved at all with Hep C elimination, yeah, I'd implore you to get in contact with us. We really can only achieve everything that we need to achieve, in the same way that everything we've achieved so far, by working really closely with partnerships with a vast range of people across a range of communities. So if there are things that you want to do, things that you want to help us with, things that you want to be involved with that will get us to elimination, then you can get in contact with us. And you can either do that through Hep C Later, or you can contact us directly on england.hepc-inquiries@nhs.net. And somebody from the team will get back to you. Yeah, we really need all of our partners to be with us, especially on this last kind of final 2 years of a big push to get us to the point of elimination, and then to remain involved, interested, and committed after that point to maintaining elimination.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for speaking with us today. I think the outcomes that we've seen in terms of the improvement in health, the reduction in mortality, and the pulling together of multitudes of organisations for the sort of shared goal of eliminating Hep C really do speak for themselves. And I'm sure many others will join me in saying a heartfelt thank you as well to you and your team for everything you've done to make Hep C elimination a reality. So if you're listening and you want to find ways to get involved, email us at connect.hepcilator@mpft.nhs.uk, or visit our resources at hepcilator.com/resources.